I'll never forget the day Karen, the self-appointed style guru of our neighborhood, marched onto my porch demanding I replace my tacky curtains. She claimed they violated the HOA's guidelines on approved neutrals, insisting I switch them out ASAP or face escalating fines. At first, I laughed, who polices curtains? But as the days went on, that laughter morphed into stress and fury. Little did I know, her obsession with controlling everyone's window treatments would drive me to unearth a serious structural issue in her own home. Because guess who wasn't following city housing codes? Yep, the same person who policed every doormat and mailbox in sight. If you love stories of petty demands backfiring in the most delicious way, stay tuned. Give this video a like, subscribe to Tailflow, and drop a comment below if you've ever had an HOA tell you how to decorate your own windows. Because trust me, when the curtain drama unfolds, it's about to get wild. I've been living in this suburban paradise for 2 years, minding my own business, when Karen took over the HOA. Everybody joked about her color-coded spreadsheets, her daily inspections, and her uncanny ability to enforce new rules no one remembered voting on. For a while, I avoided her crosshairs. I mowed the lawn, stuck to the official mailbox style, and didn't keep a single lawn ornament outside. But then I redecorated my living room and hung gorgeous burgundy curtains. That's when Karen targeted me. One chilly evening, I found a notice pinned to my door: curtain violation, non-compliant color. It cited some alleged bylaw about only using subdued earth tones visible from the street. My immediate reaction was to roll my eyes. This had to be a joke. But the next day, Karen showed up, her usual condescending smirk in place. "I can see those bright red curtains from the road," she said, like it was a personal affront. "They clash with the HOA's aesthetic guidelines." I forced a polite smile, telling her burgundy wasn't exactly fire truck red and that I was pretty sure no official rule existed about curtains. She brandished a printed page listing approved neutrals like beige, tan, off-white, and gray. My burgundy was definitely not on the list. I said something like, "I'd like to see the official board vote that passed this rule," which made her frown. She responded with, "We have the authority to maintain uniformity in external appearances," and threatened a fine of $25 per day if I didn't comply within a week. Then she marched off, leaving me to wonder if my privacy was next on her radar. Did she plan to control my furniture colors too? At first, I tried ignoring her, but the notices kept arriving, each more insistent than the last. One even hinted that if the fines went unpaid, the HOA could place a lien on my house. All for curtains. It was surreal. The stress built up, and one night I vented to a friend, Carlos, who'd had his own run-in with Karen. She'd forced him to remove a bird feeder because it attracted pests. He told me Karen thrived on intimidation. If I caved, she'd feel emboldened to pick on someone else next. But if I fought back, I needed something bigger than just curtains aren't in the bylaws. Because Karen had a knack for twisting guidelines to her advantage. A neighbor, Linda, confided that she'd once overheard Karen bragging about how she'd built her dream house addition on the cheap, skipping a few expensive code requirements. Linda suspected it might be a major structural no-no. My ears perked up. If Karen was flouting actual codes while harassing me about curtain colors, that would be the ultimate hypocrisy. But I needed concrete proof. I asked Linda to elaborate, but she only had rumors. Something about an entire second-floor extension that might not have the proper load-bearing support. She advised me to keep my eyes peeled. I began discreetly observing Karen's house during my morning jogs. The extension over her garage did look massive, a bit out of place with the original architecture. Could she have cut corners? One day I noticed some cracks in the siding near that area, thin hairline fractures, maybe normal settling, maybe a sign of something bigger. Another time, I saw a city inspector's truck parked outside her house, but it left quickly. I tried looking up her permit records at the city hall, but everything on file seemed routine. Linda guessed Karen might have bribed a cheap contractor or faked compliance. We had no smoking gun, just gossip and a suspicious crack. Meanwhile, Karen escalated. By day 7, she slapped me with a $175 fine for ignoring the curtain demand. Then she posted a passive-aggressive note on the HOA bulletin. Residents are reminded to adhere to the color guidelines for external-facing decor. Non-compliance undermines property values. I ground my teeth in frustration. The next day, I received an official final notice warning about legal action. My gut twisted. Could she actually take me to court over curtains? Possibly, if she twisted the bylaws enough. Feeling cornered, I resolved to put a spotlight on her own house. Because ironically, I'd read in the city code that any major structural addition, especially one with living space, required thorough inspections. If Karen had cut corners, the city might label her extension unsafe or even uninhabitable. That'd be a big enough hammer to get her off my back, but I needed more than rumors. So I took a risk. I called the city's building department, giving them an anonymous tip that the second-floor addition might not meet code. I claimed I heard it from neighbors worried about safety. The clerk said they'd open a file, but they'd need reason to believe something was actually amiss. No immediate inspection was guaranteed. Disappointed, I hung up, uncertain if that lead would pan out. Then about 2 days later, I discovered the opportunity I needed, purely by accident. I was out for a late walk, trying to cool off after reading yet another HOA email from Karen threatening more fines when I heard a peculiar noise from the side of her house. It sounded like faint creaking or scraping. Curiosity got the better of me, so I strolled closer along the sidewalk. The street lamp cast just enough light for me to notice a small gap in the siding near the upper corner of the addition. The wind caused the siding to rub against something, producing that odd noise. It was bigger than just a hairline crack. Something was shifting up there. My heart raced. If that extension was truly unstable, it might be a real hazard. The next morning, I decided to call the city again, urging them to do an emergency check, referencing the potentially dangerous shift in the structure. The clerk sounded more concerned this time, said they'd send an inspector within a week. Perfect. That gave me time to rally some neighbors who disliked Karen's micromanagement. We planned to attend the next HOA meeting in force in case the city's inspection revealed anything. Meanwhile, Karen likely had no idea what was coming. She was too busy blasting me with daily curtain fines, which had now reached $300. I let them stack up, figuring if I could prove her addition was a blatant code violation, we'd see who had the upper hand. Finally, the city inspector arrived on a Tuesday. Neighbors watched from windows as he spent a good half-hour examining the outside of Karen's addition, taking notes. He tried to talk his way inside, but Karen apparently refused. We gleaned all this from the odd vantage points we could manage without being creepy. He left with a serious expression, leaving behind what looked like a bright orange notice stuck to the side of her house. That afternoon, Karen posted a furious rant on the HOA forum. Malicious rumors are spreading about my home. Some people can't mind their own business. The HOA stands united against such sabotage. She didn't mention me by name, but the subtext was obvious. My phone rang off the hook with curious neighbors wanting the scoop. I decided to wait a bit longer, see if the city took more action. Sure enough, 2 days later, a second inspector came, this time with a colleague. According to Linda, who'd been walking her dog near Karen's place, they were there for nearly an hour, walking around the perimeter, climbing a ladder to the roof. I guess Karen had to let them in eventually because Linda saw them enter the front door. They left with grim faces. That evening, Karen's addition sported a fresh notice. Unsafe, occupancy prohibited. My heart leapt. She was going to have to fix it or tear it down, and it wasn't going to be cheap. The next HOA meeting, scheduled for that Saturday, crackled with tension. I arrived early, seeing a crowd bigger than usual. People whispered about Karen's fiasco. She tried to start the meeting by announcing new approved color updates for curtains, but half the room booed. Then a neighbor, Paul, stood up, pointing out the city's condemnation notice on her addition. "Don't you think we should discuss real safety issues rather than curtain colors?" he asked pointedly. Karen went beet red, spluttering that her private property wasn't up for discussion, but the crowd wasn't letting go. Another neighbor demanded to know how she justified pushing petty fines on us while ignoring major structural violations in her own house. She tried to claim the inspector made a mistake. People rolled their eyes. Sensing her crumbling authority, I stood up, reminding everyone that Karen had hammered me with $300 in fines over something as trivial as non-approved curtains. She tried to interject, but I pressed on. Isn't it hypocritical that while she polices the color of our window treatments, the city found her extension so dangerous they literally posted a condemnation notice? A hush fell. Karen glared. Another neighbor asked if the city might hold the HOA partially responsible. After all, Karen had used her position to steamroll any questions about her addition. The tension mounted, reaching a fever pitch. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in Karen's eyes. She was cornered by the entire community's outrage. Eventually, one of the board members, who'd always seemed overshadowed by Karen, suggested they table all new fines until Karen resolved her code issues. The crowd erupted in applause. Karen tried to stop it, but they outvoted her. She stormed out of the meeting, calling everyone ungrateful and threatening that they'd regret disrespecting her. But deep down, I think we all knew her empire was collapsing. Sure enough, over the next few weeks, multiple residents came forward complaining about years of petty fines. They demanded refunds. Some threatened a class action lawsuit if the HOA didn't rectify it. The rest of the board panicked, sensing how Karen's tyranny might bankrupt the association if lawsuits piled up. Meanwhile, the city slapped Karen's addition with an official repair or demolish order. Rumor had it the structural fix would cost her tens of thousands of dollars. She tried to appeal, but the city was strict about safety codes. With her back against the wall, Karen tried one last trick. She posted on the HOA website that she was implementing a special assessment on all homeowners to fund new safety measures. People realized she was basically trying to pass the cost of her own repairs onto the community. That was the final straw. A group of outraged neighbors circulated a petition for a recall vote. They got more than enough signatures. The board scheduled an emergency election. Karen raged online, claiming it was all a conspiracy orchestrated by people who wanted ugly curtains. No one bought it. On the day of the vote, the turnout was huge, everyone from retirees to new families, all eager to dethrone the curtain queen. The votes were tallied, and Karen was officially removed from her position as HOA president. She left the clubhouse in tears, muttering about legal actions, but it was over. We'd freed ourselves from her pointless demands. In the aftermath, the new board apologized for the fiasco, promptly revoked the approved neutrals nonsense, and put a freeze on all outstanding curtain-related fines. They also asked the city for clarity on Karen's addition. The city ended up condemning half of it until repairs were done. Word was Karen tried to sell her place, but prospective buyers balked at the required structural fixes. Ultimately, she ended up dealing with an expensive rehab job or risk further legal trouble. As for me, I kept my burgundy curtains exactly where they were, visible from the street, bright and proud. Each time I see them, I smile, remembering how Karen's obsession with controlling my decor led to the downfall of her own code-violating house. It's poetic justice. You can't throw stones about aesthetics when your own place is literally on shaky ground. The best part, the fiasco brought our neighborhood closer. People realized how easily one person's hunger for control could morph into a tyranny if left unchecked. We formed committees to keep the HOA in check, ensuring no single president could unilaterally pass bizarre color mandates again. Now our block is calmer, more inclusive. Some folks even started a bring your own curtain party where we celebrate different styles and patterns. We laugh about the days Karen tried to force us into monotone uniformity. Sometimes neighbors ask if I ever heard from Karen again after she was booted. I did see her once in the aisles of the local hardware store, ironically in the paint section. She spotted me, froze, then quickly shuffled away, face flushed. Maybe she was picking out the approved neutrals to fix her own interior. Who knows? All I can say is she no longer has the power to judge my color choices. And that's enough for me. Thank you for listening to this final saga of controlling curtains, hidden structural dangers, and the sweet, sweet victory of toppling an HOA Karen from her throne. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to Tailflow, like this video, and share in the comments any story you have of an overbearing neighbor who tried to police your personal space. Because, as we've learned, sometimes the ones who bark the loudest have the biggest skeletons in their own closet. Or in this case, a dangerously built addition that ends up condemned.